Welcome in. It is Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. I'm your host, Chris Childers. We are coming out of Nashville. Great race weekend. It was hot, I'll tell you that, but a ton of fans. It was sold out again for the Ally 400. Really cool environment. Nashville's becoming racing, and now we go to Chicago, which is a market we've known in the past, but not quite this way. For the last 2 years, we've been on the streets of Chicago, which happens to be my hometown. I love seeing the architecture on display for a race weekend, but let's talk about it. Brandon Lee is with us to kick off the show. We also have Joey Hand for a lot of the show today, who is driving this weekend in the number 60 car, the stage 60 car for RFK. But Brandon Lee, how are you, sir? How was Nashville? It's good to see you.
Yeah, doing great, Chris. Glad to have you out at the track. I know you made another appearance, so always good to have you there. But yeah, Nashville was up and down. You know, we had to deal with some weather and had another good finish for the 17 in Buescher and had a little bit of a disappointing end result for Brad. But nonetheless, here we are on to Chicago.
How would you describe the overtime? And Chris Buescher just kind of like Buescher, I think, was hovering around 15th. I think at one point he was 13th, but guys kept running out of fuel, and all of a sudden we're sitting in the top 5. I kept saying to my buddy next to me, I was like, if we get one more of these, we might win.
Yeah, I mean,
but how'd you feel about the strategy and how it worked out for Chris with the top 5 finish at the end?
Yeah, I think a lot of us were saying the same thing, Chris. It was one of those deals where, you know, attrition comes into play, and you know, I think it was a NASCAR record, 5 NASCAR overtime attempts, restarts. So yeah, it's just you hang in there and see how the late restarts play out. And fortunately for Chris, you know, in the last one when he got up inside the top 5, obviously he would have liked a little bit more there. I think there was some issues on some restarts that may have taken place, but nonetheless, you know, he got up in there. You know, Scott Graves made a call there later to put on right side tires, I believe, if I recall correctly, which at the time you're like, oh man, how's this going to work? But as it turns out, it worked out really well. So yeah, fortunately we were one of those that we were not worried about fuel. So there was only a couple of us that I think could say that. And yeah, all things considered, it worked out. Obviously you had a very jumbled top 5, top 10, given how that race played out. But hey, another week, another top 5, that's always a good way to look at it.
100%. And for a guy that's fighting for his playoff life, top 5s are good. They're good. You Absolutely. Take them and you keep going on to the next race and hope you do it again, and hopefully victory lane, so you don't have to worry about being in the top 16 when it's all said and done. You'll be locked into the playoff if you're number 17. Luckily for Brad, he's in the playoff. He won a race this year, but certainly there had to be some level of disappointment from the build, or it wasn't Build Submarines. It was King's Hawaiian this past weekend for Brad, which is a really cool looking car. It does look so slick moving around the track in that orange with the King's Hawaiian colors on it. But Austin Dillon, the number 3, got into him and didn't end the weekend, but certainly did not make it as sexy as it could have been. What's the thought from the 6 car coming out of that wreck with the number 3?
Yeah, it's it's one of those deals that obviously you don't like how that ended. You know, I would say that going into the weekend, Brad was pretty confident, and obviously considering how we qualified, obviously going into the race, we were very confident past that point. So yeah, I mean, look, we were inside the top 3, top 5 for a lot of that race, and I think the lowest we got would have been, you know, 7th or 8th, kind of right before that happened, and then a pit sequence happened, which ultimately put him just outside the top 15, which is how that happened. Yeah, I mean, you know, you can look at it 100 different ways, but either way, I think in Brad and Matt McCall's mind, they were cleared, and obviously he wasn't in some ways. So however you want to chalk that up, he got into him, and that honestly, it should have ended his day, but it's amazing how that team came back just to even finish and, you know, picked off 9 spots there. But yeah, to more answer your question, obviously, you know, that's disappointing considering you thought you had a top 5 car for sure. And now looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. I mean, who knows what would have played out, but given what happened at the end, you would like to think that Brad had one of the faster cars of the ones left, right? If not the fastest car. So hindsight's always 20/20, is what it is. But at least we can go home knowing we had speed and you know, picked off some spots there late, which I will say, you know, down the road, the way these playoffs sort out, basically Brad picked up 9 points right there, which who knows? May not make a difference, but come this time 2 months from now, it probably will. So always a good valiant effort from those guys to get them back on track and finish.
It could make a massive difference. It really could. And you could see how hard those guys were working at the end. Matt McCall and everybody else in that pit box trying to make sure that car, I mean, it had to pit 5,000 times, it felt like, at the end. Fuel was leaking out. The second it went in, it was just pouring out of that thing. So the fact that it finished, I think, is a modern miracle and a testament to the team and the hard work that went in from the pit crew and everybody else involved with the number 6 car, the Ford Mustang, this past weekend. Brandon, enjoyed the brief conversation, but now it's all about our new driver for the weekend, Joey Hand, who's in the number 60 with the Stage 60 program in Chicago. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk to Joey next, right here at SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. We're back here. It's Backstretch Banter, SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. Exciting weekend. We go to my hometown of Chicago. We were just in my current town in Nashville, so really excited about this downtown race this weekend. And RFK gonna be running a third car. It is a Stage 60 weekend. BuildSubmarines.com is the sponsor this week, and we got the driver of the number 60, Joey Hand, with us right now on Backstretch Banter. Joey, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. It's good to be here.
Well, welcome into the fold. Welcome into Stage 60. You look great. You got the whole, for people that can't see you, he's got the shirt on. He's got the hat on. He is number 60 through and through. How you feeling? I mean, this Chicago track is, I mean, look, depends on who you talk to, but from a fan's perspective, I love it. I think it's awesome. It feels F1 to me in a lot of ways. It's Chicago. It's beautiful. The architecture. How you feeling about getting ready for the street race?
Well, I gotta say, I'm excited about it. I mean, I'm a big street race guy. I love street racing. I've been lucky to I've done a ton of street racing all over the world. I mean, I raced DTM. We did some street racing there. Long Beach is one of my favorite venues ever. I think, for me, I think street racing is where it's at for sure, as far as for the fans. People get to come see. You'll get people that aren't even fans will be at this race because you're just in their city, right? Like, you're like, oh,
yes.
Like, well, we'll just go see this race because what else are we gonna do? They're here, and we're gonna gain fans. And then you have the people that are like, well, Chicago's a fun town. Let's go to Chicago and watch a NASCAR race. It's way better than going out in the sticks of whatever other track, right? So there's a lot to it. You know, I'm big on the whole thing, and I think it's great to have, you know, new fans and more fans. I think you'll see a lot of kids and different people that they haven't seen race cars go around, and they're going to be excited by all of it. But yeah, for me, street racing is a different beast, right? So we do all these racetracks. Just, you know, when I'm talking about racetracks, road course racing is my thing, obviously. And so you know, we run tracks like COTA or, you know, whatever we do. You have, when you go off the track or you know, dip a tire, there's not as much repercussion, right? You dip a tire in the grass, or you dip a tire just over the edge onto other concrete or asphalt. And so here, your limits are so much tighter, right? Your margins are tighter. And so it changes the game a lot. And I definitely think there's something to be said about having experience on street courses and knowing, like, hey, you can touch the wall, but you just can touch it. You can't, like, think, you can't bang the wall, right? So I think there's, you know, and again, experience goes a long way there. So I'm excited about it, really excited about this RFK Stage 60 thing. I mean, for me, you know, we were just looking at the car. The car looks awesome. Super clean looking. I think that's always a good start to a fast race car. When it looks fast, chances are it's going to be fast. You know, for me, I have experience. You know, it's not like I'm walking in, I don't know what I'm getting into, since I've done 7 races. I mean, they were a while ago, but at least I have an idea of what I'm getting into. And so, yeah, I mean, high excitement. I've been on quite a road trip. We just raced, you know, we raced Detroit only a month ago in our IMSA in the GT3 Mustang. We were at Watkins Glen last week, and we go to Mossport the next week. So a lot of stuff going on, but happy to squeeze this in here for sure.
I think we're all excited to see it. We're excited to see the 60 car on the track. We're excited to see BuildSubmarines.com going around. They've been an incredible sponsor for RFK this year. We saw them last week on the number 17 car. We'll see it on the 60 this week. They've been amazing. So you have a great sponsor. You have a really cool looking car. and hopefully a great result coming up this weekend. I know you're not a full-time Cup driver, but when you say yes to something like this and you were just looking at the car, do you feel like you can come in as one of the new guys and win this thing this weekend based on the fact that it is a road course?
Man, I don't. I tell people all the time, I don't leave my family and my home for anything but to come to win. Like I always come to win, right? And there's a lot of effort being put in from RFK, all the time, but especially to run a third car, it's not an easy thing to do, and so it's more effort. And for me, I'm excited to be part of it, and I want to show it off. I want to show what it can do, show what I can do. Always. And so I think there's always a legitimate chance for us to run up front for sure. And I absolutely think we can go win a race. When I came back, when I ran in 22, we had some pretty good moments. We were in the top 10 at Road America in qualifying. We ran up front at Watkins Glen. One of the restarts we punched off racing for the lead, and legitimately. So we've had some good runs. Like I had some good runs when I was in the cars in 22, and for me, I think this is even a better opportunity. There's no reason why, from what I see, there's no reason we can't go out and run up front. For sure.
Have you studied the track? Did you watch the race from a year ago? It was a brand new experience. It was a brand new race. How much preparation has gone into this understanding Chicago streets?
Yeah, well, so I don't know who knows what I do, but for me, for the past 3 years, I've been helping all the Ford Performance drivers in the simulator.
So you were
you
were doing Rick Ware, right, before?
Yep, I was in the Rick Ware car, but but every road course race, I'm in the simulator in Concord here. I come here and help prior to each road course race. So people know that. I don't know who knows that, but so I have experience even from last year helping in the sim with Chicago and then watching the race. And I watched very interested because we all had ideas of how it was going to race, and to see how it raced, I thought it was way better than what people expected, even, right? So and even with the rain and all the things that went on, I think it raced really good, and I think it was it was what street racing should do. It brought a lot of people, it brought a lot of fans, and I think people are excited about it. And because of that, I think there's a ton of excitement for this year. But I watched last year. I've been watching almost every night. I watch qualifying and watch parts of the race. And for me, it's different because some of the things that are different is that in IMSA stuff, our pit lane is we use pit speed limiters, and so when we come to pit lane, we just hit a button and just it holds our pit speed all the way down. There's not as many cars pitting at once because they split like prototypes and GTs, and it's not quite as chaotic. When you do a pit stop, man, it ups the chaos by a large amount. So, we have to do our own pit speed management as far as the speed goes. So you're just running throttle against brake and watching the lights and trying to really be as close, because now doing these 9-second stops or whatever, if you miss down pit lane overall, if you miss 2 seconds, if you're slow 2 seconds, it's a big drop in position, especially if you do under yellow. So and again, when I leave the pit box, it's chaos and I got to do the pit speed myself. So there's a lot of stuff for me is learning or rewatching pit lane, making sure I know the rules, how many boxes you can get in, get out of, stuff like that. So I think for me, to be honest, the driving the car is almost like, in this week, it's the thing I know the best, and I'm working on a lot of other little stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. We just did pit stop practice out here. They let me do some pit stop practice, which helps a lot. The guys jumping off the wall is pretty crazy compared to in IMSA, our car has to stop before anybody gets off the wall. Here, these guys look like you're going to run into them every time, right? So that takes a couple stops to really get your head around. So just all that little stuff. But like I said, I'm fortunate with Ford and with other things I have going on. I have a lot of things going on. I do a lot of things. And so, like I said, we just raced Watkins Glen, got through that weekend, and now this week has been about prepping for this. And then, when we're done on Sunday, I go home Monday and then go back to Mossport and race the IMSA race again next weekend.
Wow.
So just moving right along. But
no boredom. Yeah, no boredom. You are hopping back between racing series and helping Ford with the sim aspect of it. So you are kind of doing a little bit of everything for Ford, which is awesome. I mean, how cool is that to be in that position and to stay busy like that and to help a lot of different racing series and to compete in different racing series, I think would make a lot of drivers jealous. It's a pretty cool opportunity. As we're talking to Joey Hand right now, the driver of the 60 this weekend, stage 60 for RFK, buildsubmarines.com is going to be on the hood of it this week. And the Build Submarines cars are slick. They really are. So this thing should look pretty damn awesome this weekend. I'm curious. So going back into what you just mentioned about your sim role for Ford, that is a job that certainly has evolved with technology as things have changed over the years. You know, certainly Dale Earnhardt didn't have a sim guy telling him stuff back in the day.
For sure.
What does that entail? How much are you simming? What is your relationship with Ford? Give me an idea of what you're doing and the feedback that you're giving and how that's helping different teams like RFK. What is that job like? I think that's a fascinating job.
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece of something I do. You know, obviously, first priority is my racing stuff, my personal stuff.
But that's an interesting gig. You know what I mean?
Like, and then and this has been actually a lot of fun. I think I started doing it in 21, maybe did one time in 20 with as far as with NASCAR. Now I've been in this sim here in Concord since 2015 when we were doing the Ford GT stuff. So we did all our simulation stuff with the Ford GT here in the same place in Concord at the Ford Performance Technical Center. So. And then it was in 21 that I really started helping with the NASCAR stuff, and it was kind of after the Ford GT program had ended, and Ford was, kind of looking for something for me to do until the next program was coming, like this Mustang program, and said, hey, why don't you help with this next gen development? Basically, when the next gen was going to come out, and you can drive, we'll have you drive road course stuff and do some of the testing in real life with the next gen car and back and forth. And, you know, there's a couple parts to it. So one part of it is the reality of simulation, right? So everybody that's doing simulation, manufacturers, F1, everybody that's doing simulation, it's all about that kind of race to reality, right? So how much, how quickly or how much can you get the simulator to feel like the race car? And so the good part about that is when you have somebody drive it in reality, then come back and do what we call post simulate, and take the same setup from real life and put it in the simulator and try and make the simulator do the same thing, give the same feedbacks, right? So that's one part of it. That's a big part. And then it's on top of that, I do for the road course stuff, I basically help anybody that wants my help as a Ford Performance driver from trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. In the week coming up to a road course, they can ask for help, and I will go in and sit in a session when they drive and just basically give pointers and say, hey, like a lot of the tracks, like a place like Sonoma, I'm 90 miles from there. It's my home track. Coda, I've won there overall in IMSA, and Road America is a place that I've won a lot of races. Watkins Glen, done a lot there, won there. Yeah. So there's little idiosyncrasies to those tracks that work for any car. Not every situation, but a lot of times, like, hey, the placement here, like try this, look at this, whatever. But then, and that's what turned into me doing all of 22, doing all the Cup races for Ford with Rick Ware, was a lot of that was to do so I knew what it felt like in real life. Right, and what the Cup car drove like on those tracks, right? Yeah. So right now, Chicago would be the one that I haven't done, but I've driven the car enough that I with my street circuit experience, and then what I know of driving the next gen car, and I have a good feedback for them. So I do a little bit of the wheel force testing, like I did at Sonoma this year. So again, I have some of that reality, and even with the car with the new aero packages that they have now, so it's different than 2022, so that puts me back in the loop, right? So there's a lot to it, but I think people don't probably know, because why would they, or even understand how much is going on in simulation. There's no testing in NASCAR right now, and so other than like the NASCAR sanctioned tests for tires or whatever, But in the same with IMSA, there's only 6 test days allowed for the year, and so simulation's a big thing there also. So we can simulate every week in IMSA also, and so it's not going away. Like simulation stuff's not going away. And so I've learned I figured out, I've gotten pretty good at development stuff on the simulator also. So like when you're doing dampers and bars and springs and all that, understanding, like what's probably going to be work out in reality and what's maybe not, right? So so there's a lot of stuff going on, man. It's crazy. I mean, people see me here so often, because I go off and race, and I'll roll into town and I'll see the guys from SHR, I'll see guys from Rick Ware, I'll see guys from RFK, and like, are you here again? Like, weren't you just here last week? Some people don't know I don't live here. Like a lot of people are like, oh wait, you live in California? Well, how are you here so much? Well, that the Hilton Garden Inn knows me well. Let's put it that way.
A lot of frequent flyer miles, a lot of points at the Hilton Garden Inn there in the area, no question about it.
I will say that it's halfway. I raced in DTM for 3 years straight and lived in California. I commuted to Europe and raced DTM. 25 trips a year, testing, racing, and so this is easy, man.
You've gotten good at the flights. You've gotten good at keeping yourself occupied on a long airplane.
No problem.
Right. This is really cool. I am really excited for the weekend. Let's keep the conversation going. It is the Chicago race this weekend, the street race. We will have 3 cars in it. The number 6 car is going to be adorning the Elk Grove Village sponsorship logo this weekend, which is a great town outside of Chicago, a place that I've spent all kinds of time in my life being a native Chicagoan. So really cool that Elk Grove's involved. Fastenal, of course, on the 17, and then BuiltSubmarines.com on the 60. So it is going to be an awesome weekend. We got more with Joey Hand, the driver of the 60, when we come back on SiriusXM's NASCAR Radio. We're back here. It is SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. It is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing, Chris Childers. Joey Hand is with us today. He is our guest. He is the driver of the number 60 car this weekend for RFK at the Chicagoland racetrack there. Well, really not the racetrack. It's the street race. There used to be a race out there at the Chicagoland Speedway, but now it's right through the streets of Chicago. It looks really cool. The Willis Tower in the background and the Hancock and all that. Visually, I think it's the coolest race of the year, but let's keep talking about it. Joey Hand driving the 60 car, BuiltSubmarines.com, Ford Mustang this weekend. You are heavily involved with Ford, and you have been a great partner, a great relationship with Ford. I want you to give people an idea of Ford's commitment to racing at the international level. I don't know how many people understand. I know there was this talk recently with Ford getting involved with an F1 team. Maybe that's going to change down the road. I don't know how many people realize you can buy Fords overseas. Like, you'll see them in Spanish parking lots. I was in Barcelona the other day and I saw a couple of Fords, right? So they are really, to me, a little different than some of the American car manufacturers. You know it firsthand. Tell us about Ford.
Well, I don't think people know that the Ford Mustang is the number 1 selling sports car in Europe. I didn't know that either. It's crazy. But when you roll a Ford, my buddy Dirk Mueller, my teammate, when we raced Le Mans, he had a Mustang, and he would come pick me up at Charles de Gaulle Airport, and we'd drive down to Le Mans, and you would not believe the heads that get turned driving a Ford Mustang around Europe. I mean, they're like, rev it up, the whole thing, like, it's a Mustang, So it's pretty wild how cool it is in Europe. But yeah, I mean, Ford's dedication to racing, I think, is so impressive. I mean, I've been saying for the last 2 years that it's a great time to be in Ford racing. For me, it's a great time to be a Ford race car driver because we have so many people in Ford, starting with the actual Ford names themselves: Bill Ford, Edsel Ford, Henry Ford. We now have Will Ford. Bill's son is involved in Ford Performance, and then you have, of course, Jim Farley, and you have so many more execs that people don't see every week that are super behind racing at Ford and every type of it. one of the best examples. I mean, obviously NASCAR, everybody sees it. NASCAR in this country, but the GT3 car that we're racing in IMSA now, it is a global car. We can take the GT3 platform now. You can race that all over the world. So when we talk about going racing against the world and against all the other marks in the world, you can race this GT3 Mustang at Bathurst. You can race it at Spa 24 Hour. Just ran this past weekend at Spa. Le Mans a couple weeks ago. We ran Daytona, Sebring. You can run it all over the country with the same exact car. And so, I think it's just there's a huge push for Ford to go racing. And they always say Ford's racing, it all started in 1901. I mean, Ford company was basically built on winning a race, right? With Henry Ford. And so, and they really stick to that. And that's why, for me, I'm so proud to be part of it. I love driving for Ford. I love every part of it, from what they let me do. I mean, NASCAR stuff, I do GT3, I do GT4. I've done all sorts of things. So, I mean, it's big and getting bigger, right? Right now, like, again, for the GT3 stuff, we have 2 factory cars that we run in IMSA. And then there's probably 4 custom cars out around the world. But the shop that builds the GT3 Mustangs is right in Mooresville here in North Carolina. And that's where our race cars are based out of, but also where the customer cars come. And they're pumping out customer cars as fast as they can. So in the next year and 2 years and even further, there's going to be more and more Mustang GT3s racing all over the world. So people will see them more and more. But, yeah, I mean, just it's really an honor to drive for the company. And there's been multiple times, like, Ford is all about family. And one of the first things when I started driving for Ford, Edsel came up to me. He's like, the first question is that, do you feel at home here? Do you feel good? Like, does everything feel comfortable to you? He didn't ask about racing. He asked if I felt good about where I was in the team, within the company and all that. And that's, Bill and Edsel and the whole family, they ask about my kids all the time. They watch my son Chase on Instagram. My daughter plays softball.
Nice.
That's what we talk about when we see each other. We're talking about that. Bill's playing hockey. All this stuff is, and that is I've driven for other manufacturers. That is not what's happening, right?
It makes you proud as an American, honestly.
Absolutely.
That Ford is that kind of organization. Seriously.
When you think about what Ford is in the history of the world, right, and the fact that I still am getting texts from Bill or Edsel or Jim Farley about, like, how's the family? Oh, I saw Chase did good in a kart race, right? I mean, that's what this is what we're talking about, right? And on top of that, how much they put into racing and want to win. For sure, it's a great place for me.
That's awesome. And I think it's so cool to see Ford, because Ford is not, I mean, it's an incredible American company, but it really represents our country well on an international stage. And like you said, like, you'll be driving in France and people are going nuts for a Mustang. Hell, I still go nuts for a Mustang every time I see a new one.
Me too. I do rev up. I rev it up.
They're badass, man. They're incredible cars. I'm glad that they're really committing to the Mustang in the racing community. I'd love to see them everywhere, like the Miata. You know what I mean? Like, just Mustangs everywhere. It would be a great just base racing car, I think, and people would love to drive them. They're so fun.
Sure.
We're talking to Joey. He's getting ready for the big race this weekend in Chicago. Joey Hand is our guest here, who races IMSA, races endurance racing. I have a lot of questions about your career in IMSA and endurance racing, because it's one of my favorite series. IMSA's great. For those that don't get into it, who don't like it, it's a lot of fun. Endurance racing is really cool. Having headlights on cars, I think, is awesome. And night racing and just kind of that dynamic of watching it is pretty neat. Give us an idea, of where IMSA is at from your experience as a driver. I was looking at that Daytona race earlier in the year, the opener, the 24 hours, and it was amazing how many people. I mean, it was really, I think, an uptick. So where are we popularity-wise? Do you feel IMSA getting bigger and bigger?
Oh, I mean, I've been in IMSA racing, sports car racing, since 2004. It's my first time I did it. And, you have racing has these peaks and valleys of ups and downs, car count, all that. We are absolutely at the peak I've ever seen, even from when I was watching in the 80s and 90s of IMSA, right? This is the level that that nobody's seen as far as I'm concerned. IMSA has broke the attendance record every race so far. So what you saw at Daytona, that was an attendance record. Every time we do we have open grids for IMSA. So right before the race, the grid is open to come check out the cars and drivers and get up and close, which I think is a huge thing for people that don't know that. That's why IMSA racing can be fun, like can even be more fun to people, because you get right up there to the point where we have to have guys stand on the corners of the car so people don't step on dive planes and break things off. I mean, that's how. There's nothing stopping people.
How interactive,
It's full interaction. So so that's a big part of it. But, also just the way the regulations have gone. Now you have regulations around the world have blended together. So like I was talking about the GT3 regulations, now you can run those cars all over the world. So tons of manufacturers are in. Same with GTP and Hypercar. It's tons of manufacturers coming in. So you have the best. Now you have all the manufacturers, you have the best teams, you have the best drivers, all racing every week. And like at Watkins Glen, again, broke an attendance record last weekend, the week before last, and it was maxed out grid. They couldn't put any more cars on pit lane.
Nice.
It was completely maxed out with 56 cars.
Yeah.
And there was years I've been through every year where they were trying to find ways to fill the grid. I mean, we might have, there's times we had 26 cars, right? And now we're maxed out, turning people away. So IMSA is absolutely at the top I've ever seen it in watching it when I was young and being in it. And it has a lot to do with the regulations and all that, but it also has a lot to do with, who's at the helm. We have great people at the top. John Doonan is the president of IMSA right now, and he, I think, is a perfect person for that. The teams like him. He's very likable, as well as making really good decisions, and I think that has a lot to do with it. So, but also just economy has stuff to do with it, and obviously again regulations have stuff to do with it. But they've got together again with him and ACO and FIA. They were able to get together and say, okay, this is what we need to do to make racing big again around the world, and that was get the regulations together so the car can run Daytona. We can take that same GT3 Mustang we're running at Daytona at the 24 hours, just ran at the 24 hours of Le Mans, and just ran at the 24 hours of Spa, right? So that is what changes what you can do and why manufacturers want to be in, because we all want to beat the best. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to race against small crowds and say we won. We want to race against big crowds and say we won, the best and say we won. And in racing, how every racer is, that every racer, manufacturer, team, driver, doesn't matter. You want to race against the best and beat the best.
It is a great series. It has been awesome to see what has been happening lately with the crowds. I think a lot of it, here's my take on where motorsports has been. I think a lot of it has to do with F1 and that series on Netflix. And I think what they proved to a lot of people during the pandemic is that motorsports is really cool. Yeah. And it's time to get back involved. The problem with their series is that it sucks. Once you start watching it, it's boring as hell. The same guy. I mean, I know this past weekend it was different, but it's almost like this massive shock when it's not Max who wins the race. That's boring. I think now people are saying, okay, well, what else is out there? And oh my God, hey, there's this thing called endurance racing. There's this IMSA, there's the WEC. That's really fun to watch. And it's super competitive and it's way more pure. And you have these incredible manufacturers involved, from Ford to Ferrari. And, it's kind of a cool mix of everybody involved. It's truly a world competition. And I think I think people have really sort of on their own realized how good the racing is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, also keep in mind that I say it all the time. We raced the Ford GT, right? From 2016 to 2019. It was awesome. The Ford GT was a great car. The amount of owners, there was 250 cars built a year, right? Yeah. So by the time we got to 2019, there was still probably only 1,200 people driving around a Ford GT, if that. Yeah. And the difference now is when you have a Mustang racing against all these other marques, you have so many people, and not just Mustang, but all the other manufacturers. There's a lot of people that drive those cars on the everyday, right? But especially a Mustang. So I always tell a story. The telltale story is when I get on an airplane and I sit next to somebody, and you know how it is. You get on an airplane, hey, what do you do? What do you do? Like, where are you going? What do you do? I drive race cars. Oh, you drive race cars? For who? I drive for Ford. Oh, what kind of Ford? I drive a Mustang. Oh man, my mom's got a Mustang. My brother's got a Mustang. My cousin's got a Mustang. Somebody's got a Mustang, right? Like somebody down that tree has got a Mustang. And so I think that's what's great. And it doesn't matter when people see us racing a Mustang, especially for us, for our brand, for our mark. It doesn't matter if it's a 66, a 2006, or 2024. It's a Mustang. And so they can come to the racetrack and they say we're rooting for a Mustang, right? And so I think it really is. You can bring people to the track that way. I think people really love to see their car going around the racetrack. So, I mean, I'm fortunate. I get to do. I think IMSA is at the top of its game. We have a lot of manufacturers racing against a lot of great programs, and then I get to come over and do this NASCAR stuff. And that's, I mean, I'm one of the people that. Me and my son, we watch it when we're home and we have available time. We're not racing. We are watching races, right? Because I mean, it's competitive. Sure. There's a competition going on that is that's super intense. And for me, knowing what's going on in the background over these last 3 years, more so of like how intense and how much people are working behind the scenes in these NASCAR teams, it makes it even more fun to watch.
It's a lot of fun to watch, no doubt. And I'm glad you guys are so involved with it. Joey Hand, our guest. We got more with Joey when we come back. It is Chicago weekend. We have 3 cars running for RFK, including the Stage 60 car with Joey behind the wheel. Brought to you by BuiltSubmarines.com. We'll talk more about it when we come back on SiriusXM's Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing. We're back here. It's Backstretch Banter with SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing, heading into a big weekend. It is Chicago weekend. It is 4th of July week. We are really fired up for this race. We got 3 cars going. The number 6, which is sponsored by Elk Grove Village. We got the 17 by Fastenal, and then the BuildSubmarines.com number 60. Stage 60 is this really innovative thing that the team has done this year. We have some unique tracks that we run now in NASCAR, and the team said, we're going all in. Whether it's Daytona, whether it's Chicago, we're going to add a 3rd car. The 60 car, the number has a lot of history with Roush. Let's keep talking about it. Joey Hand is the driver. Joey, what do you know about Stage 60, how you got involved? I know David Reagan's doing Daytona. I mean, how did this whole thing come together from your perspective?
Well, I mean, I saw Reagan do it right at the first race at Daytona. I mean, I kind of, I'm like I said, I've been in the loop with the simulator stuff, and so I'm around. I see stuff happening, and talk to Brad and knew what they were doing there. I didn't really think about where my place would be in it, but not probably a few months ago, they came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing Chicago? They told me they had Cam Waters doing the Sonoma race, which I thought was cool also. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, for sure I wanted to do street racing. I knew exactly this would be a good one for me, no matter what. And so, and like I said before, I've been, since I'm in the simulator with these guys every week, I see what they're doing. I know they're doing a really good job. And then I get to go home and, watch, what we did in the sim, and then see how it works out on the track. And they've been doing it. I mean, they've been consistently up racing for wins, top 5s, top 10s, like in the mix. And so, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't seem like it matters what kind of racetrack for this team. So, just a lot of hardworking people, a lot of people with drive, and what I see in this program is a lot of racers. There's a lot of racers, guys that have driven crew chief for a long time. There's just a lot of racers in here, and for me, that's always a recipe for success.
And the racers like yourself have added to the story of RFK this season and the Stage 60 program, and what it means, the legacy of the number. It would be really cool to see that car in victory lane. I'd love to see a little 1, 2, 3. Why not? Let's get a little 1, 2, 3 this weekend with the 60, 17, and the 6, and everybody'd be all smiles coming out of Chicago. I can promise you that.
I like your ordering.
Promise you that.
I like your ordering 60, 17, 6.
There you go. Exactly. Well, I mean,
I'm glad.
If Busher was on, I would probably say 17.
Really?
But, We'll keep it friendly.
Now.
Yes, we'll keep it friendly.
All right.
No, I'm kidding. It would be awesome to see the 60 in victory lane. It really would. And I getting to know you over the last half hour, I think it's awesome. And the fact that you love racing at this level, you participate in all kinds. I mean, you love it. It's in your blood. And I think for race fans, it's really easy to root for a guy that loves it as much as you do. I promise you that. Joey Hand. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
do. I mean, this is something, I've not done anything else my whole life, right? So,
yeah.
And, I watched NASCAR a lot when I was young. Obviously, I had Sonoma close by. I went to a few races, and, I'm not gonna lie. I've been the guy that wanted to do NASCAR stuff for a long time, even when I was doing open wheel, when I had sports car. One of my really good friends is Boris Said, and he's been one of the original road course ringers. And he was my teammate at BMW in 2005, 2006. Cool. And I would always talk to him like, "Hey, Boris, you got to get me in. Find me a way in this." Being one of these road course ringers, he's like, "Oh man, it's tough. They're pulling back testing and blah 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 and all this stuff." And but he was always trying to help me. And I was like, how awesome it'd be to be one of those ringers, And so when it came up in 22, I was like, yes, finally. I mean, I didn't see it coming in this part of my career, right? Like late in my career, I didn't expect to have that opportunity, and I was very, very into it. And so to have another opportunity again, I'm telling you, I'm very excited about it, and I really do think we have a very good shot at this.
So what has this week looked like for you with the team? Give me an idea of the familiarity, the crew chief conversations, the spotter conversations. I mean, for you, I know it's a bunch of, new guys in your ear, new guys that you're working with. You mentioned today you were doing pit stops. So give us an idea of the week of preparation leading to Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, well, since we knew about this coming for a couple months, I was able to get in touch with, so my crew chief will be Derek Finley, and he's, very well known. And so he'll be calling the shots. I feel really comfortable about that. I haven't actually even talked to spotters, but it sounds like one of my spotters is going to be Brad's brother, who is
nice.
That's what I'm hearing, and he was spotting for me at Rick Ware. So I feel good about that because he was really good, and we had a really good rapport. So, I mean, it's started last week. So on Friday, I get to do my sim time, my actual my time in the sim. And then, so that's why I was here last week already. And then we kind of hang out Saturday and Sunday while everybody's racing. But, getting to talk to, like I said, we did pit stop practice today. But once you do the sim stuff, you're constantly texting back and forth, Derek and I, and we're like, oh, okay, well, we could do this, we could do that. And, what do you think about that? And, it's just the way these races run now, where you get very little bit of practice, then you qualify. There's only a small list of stuff you can change. So when you roll out the trailer from what you thought you were, what you wanted out of the simulator, there's not a lot changing, man. So you're really kind of throwing it out there. And so there's a lot of, for sure, you second guess, oh man, should we do those springs or those springs? Those springs or those springs, And so, but that's the fun of it. I mean, I think that's what makes it intense and makes it so cool. But yeah, so just a lot of that back and forth about what we want to start with, everything from brakes and springs and all that, and then pit stop practice, and we still have a little more time to think about it. But then also today we did a new seat insert for me a couple weeks ago, and we did a final fit today with all the AC stuff plugged in.
Nice. Yeah.
They said how much stuff do you want for cooling? I'm like, give it all to me. I'm gonna need just give it all, because you can always run it off. You can't put it in, So and the way Chicago is, I mean, you would know that place can get humid.
It can get spicy.
It can get 90 and humid.
Yeah.
Right? It's not out of the question. Looks like the weather's gonna be all right, but so just all that little stuff, New suits, does it fit? Cool suit shirt, does it have a hole in the suit for it? Are your shoes SFI? Because we use FIA stuff, and so just all that stuff. We're just going through all things, testing the radio. So there's just a lot going on, especially when you shoot. This is the first time I've been in this room. Everywhere I go, it's kind of the first time I've been here. First time I've been here.
Sure.
So just finding my way around, and then I'll tell you though, they've been really super nice group of people. Super welcoming. I feel like I've like honestly, I don't feel like it's my first time in here. Like,
Sure.
I feel like I've been here for a while. So,
Well, we got some
super
awesome
excited.
people at RFK. I want to thank some of them right now, like the guy that's sitting there with you, Thomas Burfield, who helps
That
us
guy?
put on the show every week. He's a stud. Kevin Woods and Brandon Lee and Elijah Burke, Alec Walt, our producer back in Washington, D.C., who puts together. So we want to thank everybody there. Quickly here, I have one more question. Le Mans, you've been a part of it. You've done it. How would you compare it to the major races in America from a build-up standpoint, from a crowd perspective, from an intensity perspective?
Well, I mean, of the races I've done, it's by far the biggest. You know, like you might put it up to like to Indy, because I mean we're at Le Mans, you're having 380,000 people at the race. You know, so
awesome.
I think what the most impressive part about Le Mans to me, and you know, I've been fortunate to stand on the podium a few times there. And on the top once, we know with the Ford GT, that 50-year anniversary one, which was big. But you could literally, when the race is over, they open the pit lane and the front straightaway once the cars are all parked. And people flood onto the track to see the podium. And the podium, it's like 30 feet above the track. It's not like just 10 feet.
Sure.
It's 30 feet on this bridge. And then you're on the podium. And I always tell people, if you were brave enough, you could probably break a crowd surfing record. If you just jump down, you could crowd surf all the way to turn 1, which I would say is a quarter mile at bare minimum, all the way down. That's how many people. It's just people shoulder to shoulder, front stretch and pit lane, as far as you can go into turn 1 until it turns into turn 1. They're still looking this way. So I think that's the most insane part about it. That's what gives you the level of Le Mans. For me, that's what gave me the level of Le Mans, because when I was going over there, people were like, oh, Le Mans is so awesome. Like, you get there and you go from your little trailer to the pit lane, trailer to the pit lane, trailer to the pit lane, and you don't see that many people. You're like, I don't even see anybody really, right? And like then we were fortunate to win it, and the people flood out there. And that's when you're
awesome.
That's when you give like the hair stands up on the back of your neck. Get the little chilies. But yeah, it's a big one. And I haven't raced Indy obviously. But you would think that it's kind of similar maybe to that, or the Daytona 500, something like that.
Sure.
But I mean, it's just there's a lot of passion over there at Le Mans when you do that race, because of the history of it, and what's gone down there from people getting injured or killed or whatever. Back in the day, it was like it was crazy what people were doing to test cars there.
Yeah,
and
dangerous as hell.
To test the limits. When you think about what they did there in the 60s and 70s and all the time, it's impressive. So happy I was able to stand on the top there. That's for sure.
I love getting to talk to you about it.
The people that don't know, that Ford GT is in the Henry Ford Museum. So if you're ever in Dearborn, at the Henry Ford, it's got its own little room. It still has the dirt, champagne, all the stuff all over it. It's actually a really cool thing to see. I took my son there, and Dirk and I were there a couple weeks ago to check it out. But what I always say, it's one of the most exciting things about racing and doing racing is making history, right? And we were fortunate to make some pretty big history there with Ford and Multimatic and all the people involved. So, proud to be part of that.
We'll make some more history this weekend. How about that,
dude.
Joey Hand? Yes, thank you so much for your time today, man. Thank you.
Yeah, bud. I appreciate you.
All right, that's Joey Hand. We are done for the weekend. That is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing. I should say done for the week. We have a great weekend coming up in Chicago, but we're done for the week. Thank you for listening. SiriusXM NASCAR Radio.